time is going so fast, so I will try to go right to the goal, to be sharp and as precise as possible. Before starting about talking the regulation Brussels 1 recast, I will just make a comeback to Brussels 1, because Brussels 1, yes, it works. Brussels 1 was the first step of the mutual recognition and create a European judicial area. It was really a great event. It was in 2002. I remember I was young at that time. I was a young bailiff, and it was like a revolution for us. When we talk about Brussels 1, we immediately make a kind of parallel with the procedure of exequatur. Maybe some of you don't know these terms, this proceeding, because some of you are very young, but when I was a young bailiff, when we talk about exequatur and foreign enforcement of foreign court decision, it was a very big problem. We were afraid about that kind of procedure. So we immediately and we quickly understood that some difficulties applied to apply this regulation are in this regulation. So for that reason, practitioners need to review Brussels 1. The first and the most important reason was the abolition of the exequatur. There is another reason for that. It was the desire to uniform the set of rules, because as the professor told us a few minutes ago, 27 member states, 27 ways to imagine the enforcement and to imagine the recognition of a court decision. And there is also another problem, but I'm not very concerned by this one. It is the list pendants. I'm not too much concerned by this issue, because as a bailiff, I do not have to deal with list pendants difficulties. When I receive a judgment to enforce, I don't have to look if there is any multiple choice of jurisdiction for the claimant or for the defendant to reply to lodge an appeal. So in 2015, Brussels 1 request appears into force. It was a great event for me, because I was a bailiff since 7 or 8 years, something like that. So I had to deal with Brussels 1 request at the beginning in 2015. Nice, it applies automatically. There are many references to the domicile. I will come back to this issue a little bit later. The scope of this regulation is very, very large. The professor told us about civil and commercial matters. So it seems to be easy to use Brussels 1. Also, it concerns all kinds of judgment and authentic rights. By the way, some questions have been solved since the request of Brussels 1. Especially the question of hierarchy of jurisdiction. Once again, it doesn't concern me too much, because I do not have to deal with this issue, but I know that there are some special jurisdiction, some exclusive jurisdiction. The case of plural defendants are solved in the Brussels 1 request, and also list pendants problem. But I think it's concerned mainly lawyers and for sure judges. But some problems remain. I can sum up this problem, this practical issue, in 4 parts: the language, problems of definition, the question of service and documents, and the interest rate. When I talk about language, there are two different aspects. I mean, language regarding professional, judges, lawyers, bailiff, and also regarding the application of the regulation. According to me, there is a lack of knowledge in English language terminology. Just to give you an example, about 3,000 bailiffs in France. Maybe we are 4 or 5 who are able to participate to that conference. Only 4 or 5. And you can hear my English language is not so good. So there is a very big lack of language, of knowledge in lingual English terminology. The consequence is the communication between bailiff in Europe. And if I receive a foreign decision court, if I need some explanation, if I need some advice, I need to be able to discuss with my colleague in Croatia, in Slovenia, or in another country. The second aspect of the language issue is the translation. In Brussels 1 request, there is no article regarding the translation. It can be done either by Google, just Google Translator. It's nice, that's easy, that's very cheap, that's free. You can also do that by a sworn officer. There is a very big problem because just imagine to translate a foreign decision by Google. You told us that you cannot work with specialists on that problem. So just imagine Google, what can it do? But we have to find a balance between the interest of the translation by a sworn translator and the cost of this translation. I don't know how much is it in Slovenia, but to give you an example, for France, to translate a court decision, it's about 10 euro per page in English. If you want to translate it in another language, maybe in Hungarian or in Slovenian, I think it will be 30 or 40 euro per page. So it can represent a very big amount, especially if you need to translate the annex. It can be 100 or 200 pages. So you have to find a balance for that translation. The second point of second issue regarding the regulation is the definition, or I should say the absence of definition on crucial terms. As you say, Professor, what is the civil and commercial matters? Who knows? There are many references to the domicile. What is domicile? And maybe it's a detail for you, but in France, the concept of domicile is very, very important. You cannot go to the domicile of your debtor if you do not have an enforcement title. And if you have this enforcement, you should serve several documents before going into the house of your debtors. Only bailiff and police can go inside the debtors' houses. This concept of domicile is very important and protected by the law in France. We talk about recognition and enforcement in this regulation. Is there any definition of enforcement? I don't think so in this regulation. And what is enforcement? Just give you an example. In Spain, for instance, before enforce a court decision, you need an enforcement title. You need to obtain from the court an enforcement title to enforce the main decision court. So where does it start? Where does this enforcement start? If we still talk about enforcement,